whether you realize it or not, that you're setting an example in that area that sort of strengthens. At least that's been my experience. I haven't. Keep in mind, everything I talk about today is all based on my experience with one company. So I don't have as a variety of experiences, working in different settings as some of you may.
Well, my old CEO of a $1.5 billion company, would agree with you. He always said culture trumps strategy every time. Every time I tried to take the company in a direction that was in some way not aligned well with the culture, it couldn't happen. It would never work.
It doesn't. You can't. It's like, I don't want to use like a really cliche term, but trying to fit a square peg through a round hole. It's like, that's what it feels like when you're doing it. You just can't seem to figure out how to do it, and it's because you can't, it's just so strong.
Well, to the extent that culture is really the personality of the Bootstrap venture, it's hard for any of us to change our personalities, so the same goes for the venture.
That seems contradictory to me. So there seems to be such an emphasis on encouraging people to break out of their comfort zone and work in areas that they're not familiar with, but they end up, they're like, wow, I can do this, I'm really good at this actually, now that I actually tried. But so as below as above, is it not? Is the collective culture not the individuals amassed together? If they're all proficient at breaking out of their individual comfort zones, why can't the culture do that as well?
Could be that, like, when I think of culture and how it influences the way that we work, to me it's more the approach that we take to things. It's not necessarily a particular skill set. Like when we were talking about going outside of your comfort zone, to me that means going into areas where my current skill set maybe doesn't necessarily lend itself to being immediately successful there, but bringing that attitude to be willing to tackle it when I need to. Whereas culture to me is more just the style with which I or my company approaches problems. I mean, we talk about leadership a lot, and I think in leadership there's a lot of different styles. Right? And I think leaders can be successful in a bunch of different ventures, but they're probably always going to use the same style that they've sort of grown into. And I think culture is a lot like that.
I think culture is something that, you can't create a culture. I know people say you can create a culture. I think it just happens. I've had teams that were just wonderful, and we got along well. We had a lot of fun together. The office was fun, and I've had teams that were horrible, and you hated to come in. But you can't. And yet, the first one started, and then it changed. Even though the transition in the team happened over time, the culture became terrible.
Well, I mean, there's a distinction between skills and personality. So, I think that's something when people talk about culture, they're talking about more about the personality of the place. Whereas we can all learn new skills. We spend enough time, we can gain new skills. But what I've certainly learned about myself and observing others is that you can try to change your personality. Like you go to a Tony Robbins course, you're an introvert, you go to a Tony Robbins course, you're like, oh my God, I now have the skills to be an extrovert. But that's not really you. You're emulating a behavior, you're pretending to be something that you're not. And I think that's this line that you're talking about where, the culture is really what it is. I think that's what's interesting. And so why fight it, go with it, deepen the culture, and it's okay, that's the culture. That's
if it works for you.
Yeah. If it works. Well, I mean, every personality has a dark side, so.
But as Steve pointed out, I mean, you were able to change an aspect of your personality where you were pretty afraid to come out and do these kinds of discussions and events. 5-6 years ago, you said.
He still is.
Oh, well, you hide it really well, too. And now you're able to come out here relatively comfortably do this. And so I think over time the culture can change. And maybe there's some deliberate things
you know what?
can't expect to happen.
The culture can change, but I got to tell you that my experience has been the way culture is going to change the fastest is by changing the people.
Mm-hmm.
then the way you can impact the culture the fastest is through your hiring and firing decision. So, or corrective action, however you want to call it. And that people will pay attention. From a hiring, there's no more important decision that you can make upstream than your hiring decisions. In my mind, is the people that you're getting on the bus with you to go on this journey with you are very important. Making sure you have the right people, but also when you run across a situation, you always hear about what are you willing to tolerate? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, that's as far as it will go, is to the line of what you're willing to tolerate. Well, that's really what I found defines a lot of our culture, is how much am I willing to tolerate? Where are my comfort zones, and what does my business stand for? And that's what's helped define our culture. And it is different than our comfort zone. But
your comfort zone is like that example of we did the one deployment. We're like, we'll do it. Yeah. That got you out of your comfort zone,
right?
That was.
But it didn't change the culture.
No, right.
The culture, in fact, has been pretty consistent for 15 years. But if I were to turn around and say, hey, this isn't a lifestyle business I'm running. If lifestyle is no longer like a key sort of driver of our culture, and instead it was more about results, then our culture will change. And so I learned an important lesson in December when I was in Vegas, actually. There was a chart there, and it was looking at interventions. It was looking at 4 different types of interventions. The first 2 were operational intervention. It's like making a procedural change or something that changes the result. There was a more strategic intervention, which was changing the selection of maybe some of your decisions, and which would change the result. Then there was cultural, and then ultimately there was paradigm intervention. And so, from a cultural, the way it was described to me is that there are really 3 key tenets to making a cultural change. And those are focus, leadership. Yeah, focus, leadership, and values. So right now, I'm trying to inspire a culture change in my business. And so what I've done is I've looked at those 3 key areas, and I said, focus. No longer do I provide everything to everybody. Now I provide 3 really core things to this particular kind of client in these industries. Leadership. I tell you, I've actually sort of resigned as the president of the business, and I've sort of promoted someone else into that role. I can't think of any better signal to the rest of the organization that our culture is changing. All of a sudden it's becoming different, just as a result of having someone who's responsible for a different set of, a different personality having an impact on a day-to-day basis in a different area. And then values. It's really understanding what those values are that are important to you. I actually kind of covered all of those values with y'all today. So, details, focus, efficiency, spending, less than you make, the more entrepreneurial kinds of things.
So you go run for Congress or something and take that up that way?
What's that?
Can you run for Congress or something and take it up there too?
I know. Well, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I think that there are people who are already interested in doing that, and I'm not one of them.
I'm just saying that's a principle they can learn.
Yeah. So that's a whole different. That's another thing I've learned, I guess, is being in government is a lot different than being an entrepreneur. So, that's all I brought today.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for